The reflection that stared back. I never expected a mirror to feel like an accusation. Yet here I was, standing before it, my fingers trembling as I traced the outline of my own face, a face I recognized but that also seemed unfamiliar. The morning light streamed through the blinds, cutting thin stripes across my skin, and for the first time, I noticed how soft it looked, how delicate, like it belonged to someone else entirely. I took a deep breath, my chest tight, and whispered to myself, almost offensively, "I'm proud to be me. I can be whatever I want." My words sounded hollow, yet the act of saying them anchored me for a fleeting second. I had always been the boy next door, quiet, careful, blending in. But inside, a different voice had been speaking for years, gentle yet insistent, coaxing me towards something I couldn't yet name. The skirts I had once tried on in secret, the nail polish I practiced painting when no one was watching, the soft lip gloss smudged on the bathroom counter, they were all pieces of a self I had kept hidden, fragments of a truth that had been waiting to bloom. Today that voice felt louder. Louder than fear. Louder than doubt. It whispered that I could finally step forward, that I could claim the reflection staring back at me, even if the world wasn't ready to see it yet. My pulse raced as I slowly ran my hands along my jawline, over the soft curve of my cheeks. This wasn't vanity. This was discovery. I remembered the first time I tried to cross-dress openly. The panic, the rush, the thrill of seeing my own body in new shapes, colors, textures. The skirts that twirled, the makeup that painted me bold, the earrings that swung like tiny chandeliers with every turn of my head. It wasn't just clothing, it was armor and confession all at once. I took a step back and studied myself fully, my posture, my expression. My eyes sparkled with something unfamiliar. Courage? Defiance? Pride? Perhaps all three. And yet, beneath the exhilaration, a ripple of doubt lingered. Would anyone understand? Would anyone accept the version of me I was ready to show? Then, just as I was about to turn away, the reflection shifted, not in the glass, but in my chest. A warmth spread, the first real rush of self-acceptance. I smiled, uncertain but undeniable, and whispered, "I am proud to be a bimbo, proud to be me." It was a declaration. Not to anyone else. Not yet. But to the one person who mattered most. Me. And for the first time, that felt enough. The wardrobe of possibilities. I spent the next few hours staring at my wardrobe like it held the keys to another world. Rows of clothes, shoes, and accessories, some hidden, some proudly displayed, were suddenly more than fabric and metal. They were symbols, invitations, challenges, and promises all at once. My hands hovered over a silky skirt, its soft pink folds catching the sunlight, and I shivered. It wasn't just about wearing the clothes. It was about stepping into a version of myself I had only dared to imagine in private. Each piece represented a choice, a freedom, a piece of identity I had been starving to claim. I picked up a pastel blouse, feeling the cool fabric brush my fingertips, and for the first time, I imagined walking through the world fully dressed, fully visible, fully me. The reflection in the mirror shifted as I tried it on. My shoulders relaxed. My chest lifted. The blouse hugged me in all the right places, yet not in a way that felt forced. It felt natural, like it had been waiting for me. My hair fell softly around my face, and I tucked a strand behind my ear, noticing how my features softened with the light, how the lines of my face seemed to dance with possibility. There was a thrill in the transformation, but also tension. Every part of me was awake, alert, aware of how fragile this moment was. Could I truly inhabit this identity outside my room? Could I let others see it? Or would their eyes feel like blades? I shook my head, trying to push the fear aside. This was my journey, my expression, my truth. And if I didn't claim it, who would? I added a delicate necklace, a simple accessory, but it felt like a crown. I twirled in front of the mirror, letting the skirt flare and catch the light. For the first time, I felt the pure, unfiltered joy of self-expression. And then, just as I was reveling in the image, a shadow crossed the room. My reflection seemed to blink differently, almost teasingly, as if whispering, "This is only the beginning." My heart raced. I knew it was right. This was just the first step into a deeper journey, one that would test me, challenge me, and ultimately teach me how to fully embrace who I was. First steps outside. The sunlight felt sharper when I stepped out of my room, warmer than I expected, and somehow both exhilarating and terrifying. The street outside my apartment seemed the same as it always had, yet different, like it was a stage waiting for me, and I was finally stepping into the spotlight. I walked slowly at first, each step a conscious negotiation between fear and excitement. The skirt swayed with every movement, catching the light, and I felt a strange mix of vulnerability and power. My reflection in a nearby shop window startled me. I barely recognized the confident posture, the soft sway of hair, the light in my eyes that hadn't been there before. Every sound seemed louder. The rustle of leaves, the distant hum of cars, the laughter of people walking nearby. Each noise was a reminder that I was visible now, fully present in a world that had never quite fit me. But visibility didn't feel dangerous. It felt like claiming air, space, life that had always been mine. As I walked, I noticed small details I had never paid attention to. The way my heels clicked against the pavement, the gentle breeze teasing loose strands of hair, the soft shimmer of the skirt when sunlight touched it. Every tiny element was a celebration, a sign that this identity wasn't a secret anymore. It was real, tangible, undeniable. A passerby glanced at me and smiled. It was a brief moment, almost imperceptible, but it bolstered me. I realized the world wasn't as scary as I'd imagined. People weren't waiting to judge me. They were busy living their own lives, and I was finally free to live mine. By the time I reached the park at the end of the street, my confidence had grown. I twirled gently on the sidewalk, feeling the skirt flare around me. I laughed aloud, a clear, bright sound that startled even me. The reflection in a nearby puddle confirmed it. I was radiant, a living proof of courage and self-expression. Yet, underneath the joy, a whisper of doubt lingered. Could I sustain this boldness? Could I keep being visible, keep being me, without retreating behind the walls of my room? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I let the wind carry my thoughts, trusting that every step forward was part of the journey. Embracing the mirror in the world. The park stretched before me like an open canvas, sunlight spilling through the branches in fractured golden patterns. Each step I took felt heavier with intention, as if the earth itself was testing whether I truly belonged here, or if this version of me was still too fragile, too imagined, to exist beyond my bedroom. But I didn't hesitate. Not anymore. I found a bench near the pond, its surface worn smooth by countless sitters. I sat, letting the gentle sway of my skirt settle around my legs. My reflection shimmered in the water, distorted slightly by ripples, yet unmistakably me. The person staring back was a harmony of contradictions, delicate yet bold, soft yet unyielding, playful yet profound. I leaned closer, almost touching my own face, and whispered, "This is me. No more hiding. No more apology." A flock of birds took flight overhead, and I imagined myself among them, light, unbound, fearless. The breeze teased my hair, carrying with it scents of earth and flowers, and with each inhale, I felt the weight of years of doubt lift slowly. My heart thrummed not from fear, but from exhilaration, the thrilling confirmation that this identity I had nurtured in secret was no longer confined to shadows. Yet, even in this triumph, the world tested me. A group of people jogged past, their casual glances brushing against me. My stomach tightened, a familiar knot of anxiety. Would they see me as I saw myself? Or would I become a spectacle, a mistake in their eyes? I drew a deep, steadying breath, pressing my palms to my knees, grounding myself in the rhythm of my own body. I realized then that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was the persistence to keep moving forward, even with it. I rose and began walking along the winding paths of the park. Each step was a dialogue between the person I had been and the person I was becoming. My reflection in puddles, glass, and even the polished metal of a lamppost was a constant reminder. This self was not an illusion. This self was alive, breathing, expanding. Children ran past, laughing, their joy infectious. I smiled, genuinely, and for the first time in years, felt the unguarded simplicity of being. My hands twitched with the desire to feel more color, more movement, more life. I adjusted my blouse, letting the fabric drape just right, and ran my fingers along my necklace, a small but deliberate symbol of pride. Then I saw her. Across the pond, sitting on another bench, was someone whose gaze lingered longer than expected. Not mocking, not judging, but curious, open. A spark of recognition passed between us, a silent acknowledgement of authenticity. My breath caught, not from fear, but from the realization that connection might not be as impossible as I had feared. I laughed softly to myself, a sound mingling with birdsong and breeze, and whispered, "I am proud to be this. Proud to be me." And in that moment, the reflection in the water seemed to smile back, vibrant and alive. I knew this journey would have challenges. I knew the world wouldn't always be gentle. But for the first time, I also knew that no matter what, I could step into every room, every street, every reflection with my head high. I could move through the world unapologetically, fully, beautifully. The first mirror of judgment. The next morning felt heavier somehow, charged with anticipation and nerves. I stood in front of the mirror again, lingering over every detail, the subtle shimmer of my lip gloss, the curve of my eyelashes, the soft pink blush that gave my cheeks a gentle warmth. It was beautiful, undeniably so, but the reflection was no longer private. The world outside my room seemed to have crept in, bringing with it the weight of expectation, judgment, and uncertainty. I took a deep breath and adjusted my blouse, tugging the fabric just so over my shoulders. Every movement was deliberate, a careful balance between comfort and presentation. This self, the one I had nurtured in secret, was now stepping into daylight. My heart hammered as if it could escape my chest at any moment. Could I really inhabit this version of me without faltering? I remembered the first time I dared to wear a skirt outside my home. The streets had seemed impossibly wide, the eyes of strangers sharp and prying. But today, I felt a strange combination of courage and recklessness. I wanted to prove to myself, more than anyone else, that this identity was valid, vibrant, and unashamed. When I stepped out, the sunlight caught my hair, glinting like strands of spun gold. Each step down the sidewalk was a negotiation between fear and thrill. I noticed the reflections in windows, the way passers-by glanced, sometimes lingering just a moment longer than expected. For a fleeting second, panic rose, a tight knot of vulnerability and doubt, but I forced myself to breathe, to anchor in the knowledge that my reflection had been waiting for this day as much as I had. At the corner cafe, I hesitated before entering. The chime of the door announced me, and all eyes, even fleetingly, turned. I felt their curiosity like a tangible presence pressing against me. And then something remarkable happened. One of the baristas, a young woman with bright eyes and an easy smile, greeted me without hesitation. "Morning. Love your outfit," she said, genuine and warm. My chest swelled with an unexpected mix of relief and pride. The world wasn't collapsing. It wasn't judging me to the edge of ruin. It was noticing me, and that noticing was enough to sustain the fragile courage I carried. I sipped my coffee, letting the aroma and warmth settle in, a quiet affirmation that I had crossed an invisible line. By the time I left the cafe, I felt lighter. Every glance, every reflection, every whisper of judgment was a test I had survived. And in surviving, I realized something profound. This self I had cultivated in private wasn't a fantasy or a whim. It was a living truth. Walking home, I twirled lightly, skirt swishing, and laughed aloud, the sound mingling with the wind. I was no longer hiding, not from myself, and not from the world. For the first time, pride wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a tangible pulse inside me, bright and uncontainable. Walking through fire. The city felt alive that afternoon, every street and sidewalk vibrating with energy that seemed to pulse directly into me. I hadn't realized how much my own heartbeat mirrored it, fast, anxious, and brimming with anticipation. I adjusted my skirt and smoothed my blouse as I walked, but every step carried more than the simple mechanics of movement. Each step was a declaration, a subtle challenge to a world that had long expected me to shrink, to fade, to remain invisible. I passed groups of people laughing, their casual energy brushing against me like a current. Some glanced briefly, some stared. A flicker of fear tried to creep into me, a whisper that perhaps this visibility was too much, that I was overstepping some invisible boundary. But I refused to listen. I drew in a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs and settle my chest. This body, this presentation, this me, it had waited long enough to be seen. At a small intersection, a man muttered under his breath as he passed. The words were soft, barely audible, but they carried weight. A pang of insecurity flared, hot and sudden. I slowed, steadying myself, willing my reflection in the nearby shop window to reassure me. And it did. My own eyes stared back with calm defiance, mirroring the courage I struggled to embody fully. I moved forward, faster now, fueled by determination. Every pedestrian was a challenge, every glance a test of authenticity. I realized that I didn't need to hide, didn't need to explain. Pride didn't come from approval, it came from persistence. It came from inhabiting my truth even when the world might resist it. Then, as if the universe had been waiting for this moment, a group of teenagers passed, laughing, pointing, and suddenly stopping. My heart sank for half a second, a reflexive fear of ridicule. But one of them, a girl with bright eyes, smiled warmly and said, "You look amazing." It was fleeting, almost insignificant in time, but monumental in impact. The warmth of that acknowledgement ignited a fire within me, a reminder that validation could be found, even in unexpected places, and that fear would always shrink in comparison to authenticity. I continued walking, each stride lighter than the last, a rhythm forming between my body, my spirit, and the vibrant city around me. The sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows, and I twirled briefly on the corner, skirt flaring around my knees. The wind caught my hair, lifting it like wings. For a heartbeat, I imagined myself flying above the streets, unbound, unstoppable. By the time I reached the quiet residential block near my apartment, I was flushed with excitement and self-acceptance. Each reflection along the way, from puddles to shop windows, had confirmed what I was slowly internalizing. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't fragile. I was whole, radiant, proud, and unapologetic. That evening, as I removed my makeup and changed into comfortable clothes, a serene satisfaction settled in my chest. This journey wasn't over, it was only beginning, but for the first time, I knew that walking through fear, through judgment, through scrutiny, didn't break me. It made me stronger. And I could feel the anticipation of the next day already coursing through me like a pulse, eager and insistent. The party of mirrors. That evening, I found myself standing outside the apartment of a friend who had invited me to a small gathering. The anticipation bubbled in my chest like liquid fire, and I ran my hands along the smooth fabric of my skirt and blouse, feeling the textures as if they were extensions of my own skin. Every choice in my outfit had been deliberate. The soft blush of pink, the delicate lace trim, the subtle shimmer of jewelry. This wasn't just fashion, it was identity made tangible, a declaration of the self I had been cultivating in private for years. I paused before entering, taking a deep, steadying breath. The hallway was dimly lit, lined with mirrors that reflected my reflection back at me multiple times, overlapping and refracting like fragments of a kaleidoscope. I studied myself in each one. In some, my face appeared soft, almost ethereal. In others, confident, assertive, almost commanding. I realized with a thrill that I could inhabit all of these selves at once, and that the world didn't have to limit me to one identity or one presentation. As I stepped inside, laughter, and music greeted me. The room was warm, cozy, filled with people chatting in small groups. I felt the familiar stirrings of anxiety, that prickling awareness that I was visible in more ways than one. But then I caught a glance from across the room, a friend I trusted, smiling openly, nodding in recognition and acceptance. That tiny gesture was enough to dissolve the tension that had gripped me, a reminder that I didn't have to fight alone. I moved through the room, letting my body feel the space. Each step was a negotiation between vulnerability and pride. I twirled subtly when passing a group of people, letting the skirt flare around my legs. It was playful, a small act of rebellion against the whispers of doubt that had followed me for years. Eyes followed me briefly, some curious, some approving, and none of them threatening. And in that simple acknowledgement, I felt a surge of liberation, the intoxicating affirmation that I was allowed to exist fully, boldly, unapologetically. Somewhere between the laughter and chatter, I caught my reflection in a mirror mounted on the far wall. My own eyes met mine, bright, alert, alive. And then the moment crystallized. I realized that the reflection was not just a surface, it was a conversation. The person I saw was someone I had nurtured through years of secrecy and careful observation, and now she was answering back. She was proud. She was daring. She was radiant. I let myself sit near a window, watching the city lights twinkle below. The distant hum of traffic and the soft music from inside merged into a perfect rhythm, mirroring the pulse of my own heartbeat. A friend approached and complimented my outfit, and for the first time, I responded without hesitation, without self-consciousness, simply letting gratitude and joy fill me. This was the version of me I had always wanted to meet, and now I was meeting her every day, in every reflection, every interaction, every moment of courage. By the time the evening wound down, I was exhausted but elated. Each reflection, each glance, each step through the room had been a small triumph. I realized that the mirrors were not just glass, they were gateways showing me who I had always been and who I could fully embrace. Pride wasn't fleeting anymore. It had become a permanent pulse, a rhythm that coursed through my body, guiding my steps, illuminating my expression, and infusing every moment with the joy of unapologetic authenticity. That night, as I walked home under the soft glow of street lamps, the city felt alive in a new way. Shadows stretched across the pavement, soft and elongated, echoing the journey I had taken. And though the night was quiet, it resonated with possibility, the promise that each new day would offer another chance to inhabit myself fully, to be bold, radiant, and, above all, proud to be the Bimbo I had always wanted to become. The city as a catwalk. The following morning, the city streets called to me like a stage, vibrant and endless. I stepped out with deliberate care, my pastel skirt swishing with each stride, my hair catching the sunlight in golden highlights. Every reflection I passed, from shop windows to polished car hoods, held me captive for a heartbeat, a reminder that I was seen, fully and unapologetically. The wind teased loose strands of hair, and I ran my fingers through it, feeling both a thrill and a strange serenity. It was as if the world had become a mirror of my own self-awareness, reflecting back the pride and confidence that had been growing quietly inside me. The soft click of my heels on the pavement became a rhythm, a private drumbeat accompanying the dance I was performing with the city itself. Each passerby was a new variable in the choreography. Some glanced briefly, some paused in curiosity, some smiled, and others seemed indifferent. Yet none of these responses shook me. I had learned that visibility was not a threat. It was a celebration, a chance to exist fully, openly, without apology. My heart thrummed with a delicious mixture of adrenaline and calm, the duality of vulnerability and strength interwoven in every step. I paused at a crosswalk, taking in the reflections around me. A storefront mirror caught my eye, and I allowed myself a slow, full turn, letting the skirt flare and catch the light. I examined my posture, the subtle sway of my hips, the gentle curve of my smile, and felt a surge of triumph. This wasn't performance. This was living. And the city itself seemed to acknowledge it, the sunlight highlighting every edge, every line, as though applauding my existence. I walked past a small cafe, and through the glass I saw patrons noticing me. Some eyes were warm, curious, appreciative. A young man smiled, giving me a nod of recognition, and I returned it with a confident tilt of my chin. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from exhilaration. Every interaction, every reflection, every flicker of attention confirmed that the person I was inside had a place outside. That this body, these choices, this identity, they were real, powerful, and worthy. At the park beyond the city street, I stopped for a moment to let the breeze carry through me. Trees swayed gently, their shadows dancing on the pavement. Birds chirped high above, and the sun set behind the skyline, painting the world in golds and pinks. I closed my eyes and let myself spin slowly, skirt fluttering, arms loose at my sides, the world blurring into motion. For a fleeting instant, I felt weightless, untethered, completely in tune with myself and the city around me. And then, as I opened my eyes, I saw them, 3 young women sitting on a nearby bench, whispering and giggling, their eyes following me with unabashed interest. A wave of apprehension threatened to rise, but I let it dissolve into a playful grin. If their laughter or glances were a judgment, it mattered little. If it was recognition, it thrilled me. I was learning to navigate the world not with fear, but with a luminous, audacious joy that radiated from inside. By the time I walked home, the sky was streaked with pink and violet, the city lights beginning to twinkle like distant stars. I felt as though I had danced through a universe that was built for me, that my identity was a script I had finally learned to perform with pride. The reflection of street lamps in the puddles of rain from an earlier drizzle mirrored my own smile back at me. And in that reflection, I recognized something profound. Courage wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving, about showing the world that joy, pride, and unabashed femininity could coexist in one radiant form. Reflections in the night. Night had fallen, wrapping the city in a velvety darkness dotted with neon and streetlights that shimmered like fireflies. I walked slowly along the wet pavement, each step echoing faintly against the buildings. The day's adventures had left me buzzing with exhilaration, and yet a quiet introspection began to settle in, weaving through my mind like a gentle current. The streets, once intimidating, now felt like a labyrinth of discovery, each shadow, each reflection a reminder of how far I had come. Passing a quiet alley, I caught my reflection in a puddle. Kneeling down slightly, I studied the image, the soft pastel fabric of my skirt, the blouse that hugged my shoulders just right, the subtle sparkle of my accessories. I smiled at the reflection, realizing that this wasn't just an outfit. It was a declaration of who I was. The girl staring back was fierce, delicate, and undeniably alive. She had been hidden for too long, and now, finally, she was free to shine. The air smelled faintly of rain and city concrete, a mixture oddly grounding and exhilarating at once. I lifted my head and noticed other reflections in the glass of nearby buildings, repeating, fractal versions of myself. Each reflection seemed to tell a story, one brimming with confidence, another with a soft vulnerability, another with playful mischief. I realized that my identity wasn't a single static form. It was fluid, layered, multifaceted, and breathtakingly beautiful. A lone passerby gave me a brief nod, a small acknowledgement, and my heart lifted. I had feared judgment for so long, yet here, in this quiet nocturnal cityscape, the world felt patient, waiting for me to inhabit it fully. I laughed softly, a warm, melodic sound that mingled with the distant hum of traffic. For the first time, the night didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a mirror reflecting my courage and growth. I wandered further, eventually reaching a small bridge overlooking the river. The water below mirrored the city lights, flickering with 1,000 tiny reflections, and in it, I saw myself again. I twirled slowly, watching the skirt flare and shimmer against the liquid glow. My smile was radiant, a blend of pride, joy, and self-discovery. Every reflection I encountered that night confirmed a truth I had long been afraid to embrace. I was complete, unapologetic, and beautifully myself. Even as a soft wind teased my hair and brushed against my skin, I felt the lingering pulse of the day's experiences. Every step, every glance, every reflection building into an unshakable confidence. The night had become my stage, the city my audience, and I, at last, its luminous protagonist. There was no fear now, only the quiet, powerful satisfaction of authenticity fully realized. Radiance fully realized. The following morning broke in a soft cascade of gold and rose, spilling through my window like a promise. I lingered a moment, savoring the quiet before the city awoke, the stillness almost sacred. Today felt different, not because the world had changed, but because I had. Overnight, I had absorbed all the reflections, all the moments of pride, all the subtle triumphs of the past days, and they had merged into something unshakable. I dressed carefully, letting the pastel skirt brush against my knees, the blouse settle just so across my shoulders. Every accessory, every subtle detail, was a testament to the care I had put into crafting this version of myself, not an imitation, not a disguise, but a genuine, radiant identity. I looked in the mirror and smiled without hesitation, the reflection no longer of fragile promise, but of vibrant affirmation. She who had once trembled in her room was now fully alive, eyes bright with certainty and mischief alike. Stepping outside, the city greeted me like a long-lost friend. Sidewalks shimmered with morning dew, shop windows mirrored the sun's golden touch, and the distant hum of cars and chatter wove a tapestry of life around me. I walked taller now, every step confident, every sway of my skirt a statement. No longer did I shrink at glances or imagine judgment lurking in every shadow. Instead, I moved through the world with a luminous audacity, claiming space that had always been mine. Passing a cafe, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass. I paused, twirling subtly, letting the skirt flare with deliberate grace. The reflection smiled back, vibrant, alive, fearless. And in that moment, I understood fully. Pride was not a fleeting sensation, it was a state of being. Every choice, every step, every laugh, every glance had been a brick in the foundation of who I was. I found a quiet park bench, perched atop a small hill overlooking the city. I sat, letting the wind lift my hair, my hands resting gently on my lap, and closed my eyes. The city below glittered like a living mosaic, but the real spectacle was within me. I could feel it, a warm, steady pulse of pride, joy, and absolute acceptance. I had crossed the threshold from hidden self to radiant self, from whispered dreams to uncontained reality. A soft laugh escaped me, light and unguarded, mingling with the rustle of leaves and distant city sounds. I was aware of the reflections in puddles, glass, and the gentle sheen of morning light on the park benches. Each one whispered the same truth. I was complete, unapologetic, and undeniably radiant. The journey had been long, sometimes frightening, sometimes joyous, but every moment had led here, to this expansive, glowing self. I rose from the bench, feeling the skirt sway, the blouse brush my skin, and I walked forward with unshakable confidence. The world awaited, and I was ready, not to hide, not to apologize, but to be fully, brilliantly, irrevocably myself.